Sonic, the heart of your system.
Hi and welcome back to a new video here on my channel. Also the first video on my new YouTube studio, well, with a new background, with a new camera. You can let me know feedback about the audio and video quality. Audio should be the same because it's still the same microphone, but it's a new camera. So let me know feedback about this thing. It's also now 4K 60 FPS, which should be an upgrade. I know it's not really necessary for this type of video, but I just like to keep up with tech, and that's why I decided to upgrade to 4K 60 FPS. Also, new background. Feel free to let me know what you think about this. Also, a lot of people saw this in my previous video, and there was some speculation going on if this was the new Rocket Lake 11900K CPU, but it's not. It was just a gift. There was a Tiger Lake CPU inside, which is sitting on there. It's a notebook CPU. Unfortunately, no Rocket Lake yet, but I'm sure it won't take long until we can get our hands on the new or upcoming 11900K once it's out. There are some things left I want to discuss at the end of the year, at the end of 2020. Some things I couldn't discuss yet, mainly because I was moving to my new apartment in the last 3-4 weeks and didn't have time to go into detail about those topics. Mainly, well, it's still a big topic, the availability of RTX30 series cards and also the AMD cards. I want to give you my opinion on this topic and also the opinion on the whole hardware unboxed Nvidia drama. I didn't say anything about this yet, but I got a lot of requests on comments on the YouTube channel and also on Discord to give a feedback on this or like a statement on this manner, and also at the end something I would like to discuss. I want to address some kind of feeling I got during 2020, but let's start with availability of the current hardware. Let's start quickly with the still very annoying topic, availability of current hardware. May it be RTX 30, may it be 6800 generation from AMD or any kind of CPUs. You all know that the availability is still absolutely terrible, and it's not only the availability which is terrible, but also the launch policy from all vendors. It doesn't matter if it's Nvidia, AMD, Intel, it's the whole launch policy is just getting more and more annoying every single year. And that's also the result of the prices which we can see and also the availability. Let's take a look back at 1080 Ti generation. At that generation, there was this big mining hype. And Nvidia was producing a ton of graphics cards because they were trying to fulfill the mining demand. And once Bitcoin kind of dropped down and the whole mining hype was over, then they still had a ton of 1080 Ti cards in stock. But then they were also about to launch the RTX20 series card. And at that point, what do you do as a vendor? You try to differentiate your product. Even though the 2080 was not much faster than the 1080 Ti or 2080 Ti, they were still trying to differentiate the product. And the way you can do it is just over the price. You make your 20 series card much more expensive, and this way people will think, just subjectively, they will think, oh, this is much more expensive. It should be a better card. It has to be a better card. And that's why people are going to buy it. It typically works this way in the mind of people. And Nvidia was trying very hard in the RTX 20 series generation to promote RTX and all this, to kind of get rid of those cards because they were not that special. You all know that 20 series card, I mean, they brought RTX kind of to the market, but there was no game, or there was a handful of games, and I mean, only now people are starting to really use ray tracing, but still you can get around it with AMD cards, it's no issue. But they were trying really hard to promote RTX and also the sale of the 20 series card. And due to the fact that they lifted up the price from 1080 to 2080, they also increased the base price for FPS basically on the market. And that's something you cannot just change, because when Nvidia decided to go for the 30 series card, they said, hey, we have this RTX 3080, it's going to be much faster, but it's also going to be much cheaper, selling it for $699 MSRP. This can only work if you completely flood the market with, like, I don't know, 5 million cards, 10 million cards, and everybody who wants to get a card can have a card. But you all know that the launch was absolutely terrible. There was no availability. I know from Caseking side, they had like the Caseking group, I think they had like 25,000 cards on pre-order and they had 300. And I have to say that, but the market price is not dictated by the manufacturer. The market price is dictated by supply and demand. That's how it works in a free market economy. And if there is such a huge demand, because it's a great product, it's very fast, but you have zero supply, then your market price will increase. And there's nothing Nvidia can do about that. And also not all the online shops, if they're listing their card for $700, it's not the real value of the card. The real value of the card is determined by the people who are willing to pay the price. And you might call them scalpers or ripping off people, but in the end, what they're doing is they're adapting the value of the card to the real market price. Because essentially people are willing to pay the price. I know people, they bought like a 3080 for 1,300, 1,400 euro, which is so much above the MSRP, it's like double the MSRP. But they are willing to pay the price because they want to have the card, they want to have the performance, and this way the value is determined, and not if Nvidia says it has to be sold at $700. And the only person you can blame, or the only company you can blame for this is Nvidia, because the supply is absolutely terrible and the launch policy. And you cannot blame the scalpers for adapting to the real market value, because this is something that will naturally always happen. If you buy a card and somebody comes around the corner and tells you, hey, can I have your RTX 3080? I will give you $400 more than what you paid. Most of the people will do it. And then like 2 months or 3 months later, they can just get their card cheaper and earn money for not doing anything. And that's how the market price is dictated, by free market economy and supply and demand, and not by Nvidia trying to dictate a price which is not going to work because the value is simply much higher. It's the same as if you're in the car industry and you're trying to sell a car for $5,000, which has 1,000 horsepower and consumes 1 liter per 100 kilometers, and you can only supply 10,000 of those cars per month. And those cars will be sold by, I don't know, 200,000 per month, and not 5,000. It's not like the manufacturer can dictate the price, and people have to understand that. It's just supply and demand, nothing else. Changing over to the whole Hardware Unboxed Nvidia drama. It's something that cooked up a few weeks ago when Hardware Unboxed published an email where Nvidia stated that they're not going to supply Founders Edition cards anymore to Hardware Unboxed due to the fact that Hardware Unboxed was focusing a lot more on rendering performance instead of ray tracing, which is something Nvidia obviously is trying to promote. And then everything blew up. Like Linus was having a lot of harsh words against Nvidia, and like Jay's 2 cents. And I also got a ton of comments on my YouTube channel that people wanted to see a statement what I think about this whole topic. And to be honest, I was a little bit surprised about this whole thing. First of all, I was questioning myself as an influencer or YouTuber or tech media. Do you have the right to ask for samples? Personally, I would say no. I'm not sure if, you probably can't say that Hardware Unboxed was trying to say that they have a right for samples. They never said that, but that was a thing that came to my mind. And then the second thing which came to my mind was that Nvidia was basically just telling the truth, which is something nobody else is usually doing. I know that behind the doors, such things are happening all the time. Obviously, all vendors are trying to promote their product the best way possible. They're always thinking, how can I put this product to a media where it's getting the best exposure? Because at the end, they have to sell the product. And if they know that somebody is not focusing on a topic they want, they might give it to somebody else, which is something that is happening all the time. But this time, Nvidia they were open and kind of told the truth, and they were bashed for this really, really hard. And that is kind of, this is always going on, but it's not a surprise to me. And I also don't think that you have the right to ask for samples. And if the vendor decides to give it to somebody else, then it's just the way it is. I also don't usually do the typical launch content, like the typical launch reviews. That's why most of the times I don't get like Nvidia samples, AMD samples, Intel samples. Most of the time I don't get that. If I have hardware available for launch, I always get them through obscure sources and just friends I have in the industry. Most of the time it's not really official because I don't follow what they want to see. And that's why you usually don't get those samples. But yeah, it was very interesting to see the reaction of the community, and it was also a very surprising reaction to me. But this whole topic also transfers into something which annoyed me more in 2020 than in the previous years, and that is the fact that most of the vendors are trying to do everything right now. And let's say just ASUS, MSI, Gigabyte, all of those mainboard vendors, all of them are trying to do everything. They're doing PSUs and cases and AIOs. And I mean, by doing, I mean they're not making them themselves. They may be designing them and giving guidelines, but the production or manufacturing is most of the time done by somebody else, which is absolutely fine. I have no issue with that. But if I'm sometimes doing a project and I'm asking for, hey, what do you think about if I do this project and we can work with this mainboard, but I'm going to use this other graphics card and I'm going to use this other AIO, then a lot of vendors will reply, what about you think that you're using our stuff, or we don't want to supply X if you don't use Y. This is something that happens all the time. Personally, I can absolutely understand it from a vendor's point of view, because if I was the vendor, I wouldn't do it different. I would always try to promote my stuff and not the products from the competition. But on the other hand, it makes it very boring for me, because I don't want to build an all ASUS PC or all Gigabyte PC. It's just something that is kind of not interesting and always feels like it's pure advertising. Most of the time, there is just a better product from somebody else which you would use. And you all know it out there. And if I just pick products from only a single vendor, it always has this weird taste to me. And at the same time, I totally understand it. And if the vendor is telling me, hey, in this case, I cannot supply it to you, then I just buy it. Then I just buy it myself. I don't have an issue with that. But that is the exact same situation as what is happening or happened with Hardware Unboxed and Nvidia, kind of. Well, yeah, not everything is going in the right direction in this industry, but it's always this way. I don't have hope that much is changing, but we can always try. In the end, 2020 was a very interesting year, also a very tough year. I mean, business-wise, for me, it was probably the most successful year ever, because everybody's staying at home and you're all watching YouTube, and yeah, a ton of people are buying IT stuff. And yeah, business-wise, I cannot complain, but on a personal level, it was very difficult and very tough. But I think we're all going through the same thing, and I hope that you're all staying healthy in 2021, and I hope that things are getting better. I already want to wish you a Happy New Year 2021 and hope that things will get better and maybe we can have more stuff like the LTX back and yeah, things I'm missing. All right, thank you for tuning in and see you next time. Bye-bye.